Hello, this is Megan.
And this is Steven.
And this is a Synchrony podcast where we talk about transforming apostolic dating culture and ending loneliness in the church. We still have not fixed our wall.
Nope. Still there.
Still there.
Still have the headphones on.
Oh man, we're going to have to put a sticky reminder or something for you to take those off.
It's okay.
It is.
It'll just be a common thing that I do in every episode.
Yeah. It's midnight, which is also becoming a common thing that we do in every episode.
Yeah.
And we're drinking coffee.
Yes, we are.
And we're going to spend some time talking about coffee. Okay, so if you guys were listening like a few weeks ago, I don't remember which episode this was on, but I made a joke toward the end of the episode where I was like, man, if we ever get sponsorships, I hope the first sponsorship we get is for a coffee company.
It was like a second or third episode.
Really?
Yeah, it was pretty early on.
Oh, wow.
If you guys hear clicking noises in the background, it's our dog's fingernails walking on our wood floors.
She definitely doesn't have
Not
fingers.
fingernails. Nails. This is how this podcast is going to go.
It's going to be one of those, folks. So some context for folks. We are in the process of working with a lot of other apostolic podcasters because we're trying to get the word out about Synchrony as much as we can. And in that effort, we met an amazing couple.
Yeah, we did.
David and Jessica Tandrup, who by themselves are just like a powerhouse. Like, talk about values alignment. These folks are just amazing. They have served as short-term missionaries in Denmark. They took their family with them, like their kids, and they went to Denmark for like 9 months, I think, and just poured themselves into that. They have a real heart for missions. Jessica is a podcaster and has an incredible show called The Good Question Show, and we had the pleasure of talking to her a couple weeks ago.
It was so much fun.
It was really fun. She's so good at it.
Yeah. We both walked away like, wow, she's really good at what she does.
I know. And she made us feel so comfortable, and the conversation just flowed, and we really had a great time talking to her. So as part of the work to get the podcast going, we were just talking about, their mission, our mission, how we could support each other. And so we decided to set up a little, I guess it's kind of a sponsorship process. They're not paying us to do this, and we're not paying them to do this, but we believe in each other's cause. So David and Jessica have a coffee company called Cafe 117.
Ooh.
And they founded it with the intention of using it as a platform to serve missions. So it's this amazing company that they've started. It's owned obviously by Apostolics, which is amazing. They sell top quality specialty coffee.
And it tastes fantastic.
It does taste fantastic. We have a dark roast blend that we got because that's sort of my jam. And it's delightful. We'll be drinking it throughout the episode and probably for the next few days. We go through coffee pretty quickly.
Yeah, we do.
But the good news is you can order it on subscription. So I think we're just going to sign ourselves up to get their coffee. It's really yummy. And it's roasted to order, which is nice. So I was talking to Dave about it, and you get your coffee usually like within a week of ordering. So it's roasted to order when you purchase it. It's super fresh. It comes really, really quickly, well packaged, and it's delicious. And the best part about it is that 20% of their profits go to Compassion Services International.
That's awesome.
Yeah, which is, if you're not familiar with Compassion Services International, that is a missions organization that specifically works with disaster relief. So they're usually on the ground very, very quickly after any kind of natural disaster. Just incredibly brave, heroic people that are taking aid, medical aid, food, supplies, and obviously prayer into really, really difficult situations. Yeah. So we are grateful to David and Jessica for helping us talk to more people about Synchrony. Their listeners are hearing about the Synchrony project. We're also just very grateful for their heart and their ministry.
So if you guys drink coffee, which I know probably most of you do, go check out Cafe 117. It actually tastes fantastic.
Right. Or buy it for someone that you love. And we'll have a discount code in the show notes. So,
oh, awesome.
Yep. You can put the code Synchrony in at checkout, and they're going to give you 15% off of your order. So thank you so much to David and Jessica for offering that to our listeners. We're really excited to partner with them. You're going to keep hearing about them on our podcast because we believe in their mission. And they've been very, very gracious about supporting our mission. So we're just excited to have made that connection.
Yep. Thank you, guys.
This just goes to show you that when you speak things out in faith,
That's right.
the Lord will manifest that sometimes.
All right. Lord, more men.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. Okay. I want to get right into this topic because I know we're tired and loopy, and
Oh, yeah.
if we don't hurry, all of the good thoughts are going to run out of our little brains, and then this won't be the punchy topic that I think it should be.
Okay, let's do this.
Okay. Babe.
Hmm.
Let me just ask you a question.
Okay.
Which gender, male or female, is more visual?
Well, I would have to say stereotypically, it's usually men is what at least we've been told our whole lives.
Yeah. So we've probably heard this. We hear this in school sometimes, I think. We hear this from the pulpit. Men are more visual. Men are visual. Whatever. And I got on this tangent a little while ago because I was thinking about, sort of messaging that's become part of how we talk about dating and relationships and how we talk about dating interactions.
Yeah.
And I started to do some research, as I do, and went down some rabbit holes, as I do, and just found that we might be taking that a little too far in how we talk about it with dating.
Oh, yeah? Do you have some stats?
Not so much stats, but some really interesting data that I want to kind of unpack.
Cool.
Yes. So I'm going to just kind of put my cards on the table and say I'm not, I haven't done, a full paper's worth of research about this. I'm going to cite my sources and provide them in the show notes so people can go check them out themselves. They're all publicly accessible, which is great. Peer-reviewed studies, so you can go check those out for yourself if you'd like to read them. But what I came away with from looking at that research was that we have been overestimating the differences in how men and women's vision and their visual stimulation affects things like attraction, right?
Okay.
And because we've been overestimating those differences or not understanding them completely, we have put unrealistic expectations on women, mostly, that should not be there.
Okay.
So just to kind of unpack this a little bit.
Okay.
When you hear the phrase, well, men are just more visual, what are people usually talking about with that? Like, what are they using that to kind of justify?
Attraction, modesty.
Right.
Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah. And
that's all I can really think of right now.
It's fair. Specifically with attraction, I've heard it used a lot recently in conversations as a way for men to talk about why they're uncomfortable with using a dating service that doesn't put women's pictures up at the forefront.
Yeah.
Have you heard that from guys that we've talked to?
Yeah. I mean, and when people ask me questions about synchrony.
Yeah. So for context, if you're not familiar, the Synchrony Project does not post pictures of our community. So we do share a photo of someone that you're scheduled to meet through a synchrony conversation. So you do get to see what your match looks like before you talk to them.
Yeah.
But we don't have like a dating app where you have a profile with, some pictures of you standing in a boat holding a big fish or whatever.
Yeah. Saying, I like to fish and I'm apostolic. Swipe left or right.
Right. So that's kind of atypical in the dating space right now. I think most dating apps and also things like Facebook groups really hinge on the possibility of seeing photos of someone, right?
Yep.
And really focus on that aspect of visual attraction first.
Yeah.
And so when we've talked to men about being involved in the Synchrony Project, one of the concerns that we hear most frequently is that they won't be able to select women that they talk to based on their photos, which I want to be compassionate toward that concern because I know that it's how we've been trained to date.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be honest with you and say that I'm also kind of frustrated by it.
Okay, explain.
So the reason why I'm frustrated by that is that we believe very strongly that attraction first dating is not healthy for Christians. And this is not to say that physical attraction or attraction to your partner isn't important.
Yeah,
right?
it's absolutely important.
It is. And we talk to people when we meet with them about their preferences for someone's physical appearance, right? And to the extent that I can, I try to take those into account,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
make sure that there are aspects of someone's appearance that are going to really appeal to the person that they're meeting. We agree that that's important. But worldly dating right now is attraction first all the time. We start with an image. You make your choice based on the images. You need to curate the perfect images or Photoshop the perfect images or, create this persona in order to be taken seriously on these apps. And we've developed, we talk about like swipe culture, like we've developed this habit of making snap judgments about people based on pictures and videos of them.
Yep.
Which is a real tragedy because there are some people who, one, don't look great in photos and it's not a great representation of themselves. I saw a really beautiful little like analog for this on Instagram where someone was talking about how for people who aren't photogenic, and I lump myself into that category because I've never liked a photo taken of me. Someone said it's like looking at the sunset, right? You could be observing the most beautiful sunset, but if you try to take a picture of it on your phone,
oh, sure,
chances are it's not going to really capture everything about it.
Yeah.
Right?
From a photography perspective, it's totally true.
Yeah.
Unless you're extremely skilled at photography, it's really hard to like capture a landscape photo and it's like rawest beauty.
Yeah. And I think there are some people for whom that's kind of the same thing, right? It's not everyone looks fantastic in front of a camera. And there could be someone who is completely aligned with your values and who you would find physically attractive to a degree, who you would immediately reject in an online dating scenario because their pictures weren't up to par based on what your expectations were. So all that to say is that attraction first dating is not the right path forward, according to sort of the perspective that we've cultivated, right?
Yeah.
It sells a lot of people short.
Yeah.
So I find when men are really hesitant, and I'm particularly talking about men because that's where we hear most of this commentary about pictures, right? When men are really hesitant to use something like synchrony because they wouldn't have control over who they met based on images, it makes me just realize how much we've internalized this idea that you need to be able to see someone and what they look like before you can decide if they're worth a conversation.
Yep. Even if 95% of their values in the direction that you are going is aligned, or like you're going the same direction, or you care about the same things.
Right.
We've still had people say, like, I don't know if I want to, and not that they're. I'm trying to be fair, but like until they see them, which is understandable. If they see them and there's something that they don't immediately like about the image of that person, they'll throw out the 95% of going in the same direction.
Yeah.
For a couple things that they saw in a photo.
Yeah.
That necessarily might not be very attractive. But the thing is like, yes, you want to be attracted to the person that you're going to be married to.
Mm-hmm.
But how much of attraction is like you getting to know that person and falling in love with their heart and their mind and the way they think and the common goals and like the overarching like trajectory of your life.
Yeah.
Right? Imagine having someone drop dead gorgeous and they don't like to do or talk about anything you like to do or talk about.
Yeah.
Or they have say you love puppies and they absolutely despise puppies. I don't know what kind of evil person
kind of psychopaths you hang out with.
Yeah, this is not a good example, but it's just basically like you can have someone absolutely gorgeous that you're attracted to,
right?
But if they are not in the same vein of the direction that you would like to go in life, that person can become very unattractive to you over time.
Yeah, that interaction is always going to feel shallow, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing. I mean, when we talk about intimacy and vulnerability, we're really talking about the ability to feel seen entirely by someone and feel safe with them in that experience of being seen.
Psychological safety, with like together, like
Yeah.
is super important.
Absolutely. So, and I think, on the flip side, right, you could have someone who is not conventionally attractive. And when I say conventionally attractive, what I'm talking about is attractive in the way that A-listers in Hollywood are,
Oh,
right?
sure.
Attractive in the way that our Western culture has sort of impressed upon us, which by
Yeah.
the way is completely cultural. Those standards of beauty vary widely across the world,
Sure.
right? But when you think of a movie star, right, that is sort of fitting into the archetype of what conventional attractiveness is.
Yeah.
And there are people who are not very conventionally attractive, who are massively attractive to the people that they're with,
Oh, yeah.
right? And to other people around them,
Yeah.
I've met people with limb differences, with certain types of physical handicaps, with challenges in a variety of places that would sort of take them out of the category of conventionally attractive.
Yeah.
Who I found absolutely stunning because they were hilarious and like a wealth of knowledge, or they were interesting in ways that were unexpected. So I challenge the idea that you have to be immediately physically attracted to someone for them to be a good fit for you. We weren't immediately physically attracted to each other.
No.
I mean, like,
And not that we didn't think that each other were attractive in the sense of like we didn't notice each other. It was
No.
just like we were around each other for 4 years and never pursued one another.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this on the podcast
Yeah.
before, so this is going to sound like a diss, but Steven's heard it before, so he's okay. Like, you weren't my type, quote unquote. When we first started talking, I was into larger bodied guys, and you were a very lean guy at the time. You were like running around a whole lot.
Yeah. I don't know how with the amount of fast food I ate.
I know, but yeah, your metabolism was just crazy.
Yeah.
Hashtag college life.
Yeah, like sweet teas from McDonald's and Monsters.
Yeah, I feel like that's also when you and Brad were momentarily trying to train for a triathlon, though.
That was a very, very quick blip in my in my life.
But you tried. That's what matters.
Yeah, sure.
So anyway, all that to say is like, I now find you devastatingly attractive.
Well,
right?
thank you.
I can't imagine being with anybody else. And you are a conventionally attractive person. Like,
You tell me this, but
I think so. And like, no, please don't like vote on this. He doesn't need it. It'll go to his head. But, I think it's worth saying that like some people might face challenges in this arena that you and I didn't face automatically. All that to say, physical attraction was not the basis of our connection.
sure.
And I think with many couples that really have staying power to last, it's not. You
Yeah.
know?
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's get into this paper that you're talking about.
Okay. So
Put on your nerd glasses.
I actually didn't wear my glasses, so if I'm like making weird faces at my phone, that's why. So we always hear that men are more visual.
Yeah.
And we use that to justify the idea that men require someone to be more attractive in order for them to be a viable partner, right?
Yep.
Or they need to see more of someone before they can determine whether or not they're a good dating partner. So I went into my research with a question of like, okay, is there actually a difference between how men and women view the world in this way? And the answer, in short, is yes, but not in the way we've been told.
Okay.
Okay. So there is some data to suggest that men and women have different levels of visual acuity, meaning our eyes work differently, right? And you could argue that men's eyes work better for some things. I'm looking at an article from 2011, which is that male infants, they looked at male infants, I think between like 4 and 6 months old, and found that there was a significant difference to their female counterparts in how they tracked like propulsive motion, so things that were moving in space, and how their bodies imitated the motion of the things that they were looking at, right?
That's right. So you're talking about like hand-eye coordination or like...
I don't think at that point they really have hand-eye coordination.
Sure.
Like,
Imagine like this like 6-month-old like learning how to dribble a basketball. But...
Yeah, we're not quite there. But basically they were able to find significant enough differences in how these babies were responding to visual cues to understand that there was a a sex-linked difference in how they saw the world. And with that, when we're looking at babies that young, we're not talking about like a training thing, right? As children get older, there's some research to suggest that boys are targeted toward more spatial activities, more activities that involve things like understanding how objects rotate in space.
Mm-hmm.
Personal anecdote: I am horrible at this.
Yeah, no, Megan, if you try to help her understand like where something is, like on a map or in a city, and you say like, okay, well, if you're looking at it from above,
I can't
you've
do that.
automatically lost her already.
Done. Yeah, I am.
It could literally be a box, and she immediately just shut down.
Yeah, we should tell the story because I don't think we've told it yet. That when you went to my parents to ask them,
Oh yeah.
to ask them for my hand in marriage. So
No, let me tell it.
Okay, yeah, you can tell the story.
So basically, what happened was I asked Megan's parents to go to meet with them for breakfast. I lived in West Palm at the time, so I drove 4 hours to meet with them without Megan knowing I was in town. And I wanted to ask for Megan's hand in marriage. Well, I asked them after, explaining to them, how much I love their daughter and how amazing she is. And they gave me their approval. And this is their time to impart wisdom into my life. About their daughter.
The people who know me best in the world, they could have told you anything about how to have a successful life with me.
Well, I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, this is now like almost 10 years ago at this point. The first thing they told me was, make sure she always has her GPS.
Do not let her leave her house without a GPS.
They're like, Megan is very spatially compromised.
That is a very diplomatic way to put it.
And they're like, she will get lost anywhere, even if it's in a city she was raised in. So please make sure she always has GPS. Nowadays, we have cell phones with GPS, but back then, it was like, make sure she has her Garmin.
Right. Yeah. No, it was good times.
It's really funny.
Yeah. So, I mean, but in terms of the data itself, there's data to suggest that as boys grow, they're probably exposed more typically than women are to activities that help them hone those skills.
Yeah.
And sports is part of that, and how they are targeted toward traditionally boy styles of play, right? And so there was another study done, and this one had a pretty small sample size, and it was done with just like a small group of college students. And the researchers actually said, like, we did this during COVID, and, it was like 130 college students basically that they did the study on. But it's still interesting.
It's a decent sample size.
It's not bad, but there was a pretty big gender disparity. They also had many more women than they had men in their study, which is funny. But they still found a statistically significant pattern in how these college age men performed in visual tests where they had to visualize the orientation of something via a computer program, performed much better than their female counterparts. So there is data to suggest that when it comes to just seeing things, seeing how things move and how things work, men might have some predispositions to be stronger in that area than women are, right?
Yeah.
Our literal eyesight might function differently, or not so much how our eyes work, but how our brain interprets visual stimulus, right? However, we as a culture, and I mean like Western culture, have extrapolated that to mean that men see an attractive woman very differently than how women see attractive men. And that is not the case necessarily.
Interesting.
Yes. So, this is going to be a little bit dicey because I'm going to try to be appropriate when describing the studies that were discussed here, when most of them were talking about how to measure effectively like attraction responses by measuring arousal levels.
Okay.
Right? And these are not studies that apostolics would want to participate in. Let's just put it that way. They were well done academic studies, but they basically involved exposing the participants to some lewd content.
Yeah.
Right. in order to gauge both physiological responses and psychological responses to those things. So I read this article, and it was published in 2007, so it's not super duper recent. But the reason why I really like this one was because it was a literature review that looked at, I want to say, 78 different articles on this topic.
Wow.
And if you're not familiar with academic writing, literature reviews are usually where the authors will say, hey, there's been so much said about this topic, but we need to kind of pull it all together and understand what the overarching messages are and whether or not it confirms or undermines a specific hypothesis. So these researchers pooled all these studies together, and what they found is that men and women don't have differences in their brain when it comes to the neural pathways, the actual functions of the brain around attraction, arousal-based attraction, right? But how those pathways are activated can be different.
Okay.
Women, in other words, are just as likely to experience intense attraction and arousal based on what they see, but that's going to sort of click on based on different things than what it would for a man.
Okay.
So
please do explain.
Yeah. So basically what it found is that there were differences in what types of content men versus women found arousing, but they experienced, to what we can understand, roughly the same types of arousal based on those images.
Okay.
Right? Men tended to fixate more on the action taking place within the content. Women tended to fixate more on the setting, right?
Okay.
The style, stylization of it, the narrative around it. They also found that there was a lot of social factors that impacted how men and women responded to stimuli. But the long and short of it is, in terms of what lights up in the brain when a man sees something that is arousing or attractive, it is the same type of response that lights up in a woman's brain, more or less. They noted some occasions where researchers have found that women are more likely to suppress those responses, and they think that can be kind of cultural, right?
Okay.
One of the studies they cited was about how sexual misconduct is portrayed in media, and the vast majority of sort of pop culture media, right? Like, think TV shows and movies. Women in TV shows and movies who step outside of the bounds of what's considered sexually appropriate are more likely to be punished within that movie or TV by negative consequences than men.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
So they basically had this idea that women have sort of been coached not to acknowledge their levels of attraction and arousal in a way that men have not been coached. But basically the same parts of the brain light up. Our bodies and our brains do the same things. How our bodies respond physically differs a little bit from across the genders.
Oh, sure.
Because we just have different bodies.
Yeah.
Right. But the idea that men are, that they fundamentally work differently when it comes to what comes in front of their eyes is not true.
Yeah.
And the data suggests that women are just as likely to see something really attractive and experience an overwhelming feeling of interest and arousal. It's just that they're going to key in on different details about what that person looks like and what they're doing compared to what a man would key in on.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to... There's another paper that you talked about that pairs in really well with this that I want to make sure that you go over as well, because there's a lot of social aspects to this, of expectations of men and women, and specifically with the ability to control yourself.
Yeah, this is this kind of ties into our purity culture episode a few episodes back. But in our culture,
and where the responsibility lies on, and who it and who it falls on as well.
Yeah. So there was a study that was done to basically say, the research question was basically, how much control do men have over their arousal response?
Yeah.
Right. And this was also part of this research review. They bring up this study. And the basically two groups of men were shown the exact same thing, but one group was told, try not to get turned on.
Yeah, basically.
And they found that overwhelmingly those men were able to control their physiological response to that stimulus.
Yeah.
And we're talking about fMRI imaging, like they were controlling the parts of the brain that lit up. So it wasn't just that they were controlling their facial expressions, right? They were actually
or like the physiological response to arousal, right? This was a brain brain connection response.
Yeah. They were able to control the overwhelm of neurochemicals that would normally go off in their brain just by telling themselves, no, we're not going to do this, right? And that jumped out at me because I was like, wow, men actually have an immense amount of control over their response. And I assume women probably do as well. Women weren't included in that study.
Yeah.
But I assume that women probably have a similar ability. You know, it kind of goes along with what I just said about women's inhibition dampening some of their attraction responses, right?
Well, let's get into that, but I want to talk about what jumped into my mind when you first told me that.
Mm-hmm.
So I have been taught my whole life, like whether I believed it or not, it was still something that was being said, like boys will be boys. Like, men have a problem controlling themselves.
Right.
And I've heard from women say that, like, that a lot of pressure is put on them to be the ones to not tempt men.
Right.
Right. Because they're like some ravenous beast that can't control themselves. Right.
Right.
And so now there's a lot of pressure for women to turn off their minds and their bodies.
Yeah.
In a way, even in modesty culture, purity culture is talked about, hey, don't be a stumbling block to men.
Right.
When the first thing that came to mind when you told me this was when I was in nursing school.
Yeah.
Like, I remember we were in one of our classes in preparations for clinicals, and they're saying, hey guys, you're going to see people naked. You're going to see people's body parts, every side of them. And this is part of professionalism where you just have to turn it off.
Right.
And it's like, sure, those body parts that you do end up seeing, naturally, you do like seeing those things. But in a professional environment, you don't even entertain that idea.
Right.
You have a job to do. You have a person to take care of. You have to get them clean. Whatever the job is,
right.
That is something that you can literally turn off. EMTs, paramedics, nurses, doctors.
Mm-hmm.
That is something you completely disconnect.
Right.
And so it made complete sense to me that you have the ability. And I'm like, wow, I never thought about that in the terms of, I thought it was like a special skill. And I'm sure it is a skill over time, but like we're told as nurses, there's not a choice. This is what you got to do.
Yeah. And you do it.
Yeah.
Because it's what's right.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's about being professional.
Right. And it's about, I mean, honestly, in that setting too, you care about the person that you're taking care of in the sense that you want to treat them well, right? And with respect and dignity. So I think we do a disservice to men by saying boys will be boys.
Yep.
I think that tells men that they're not in control of their minds.
It's almost societally giving permission to men to respond immaturely.
Yes. And it's not scriptural either. So I was looking at this and like we quote these verses all the time, right? I'm looking at 2 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 3. For though we walk in the flesh, we do not war after the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds, casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalteth itself against the knowledge of God, and bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ.
Yeah.
Right. And I just think, I don't know how we kind of missed that, not missed, but I don't think we've given men enough credit in their ability to reach into that well of, of holiness that comes through the Holy Ghost and apply that into situations where they're looking at women, right? We don't tell women that girls will be girls. But the fact of the matter is girls' brains and boys' brains work the same way when they see something that they're attracted to. Yeah.
It's just girls have been taught that they have to repress that side of themselves.
Right.
Because how dare they tempt a man?
And this is not an invitation for women to just throw caution to the winds and go, like stare at every guy that walks down the street, right? But this is just to say that we need to change our understanding of how differences in gender
Yeah.
actually impact how people view each other,
Yeah.
right?
Like now we're kind of getting into like modesty conversations and stuff like that.
Sure.
But like, it's not the responsibility of a person to have to, like, sure, you don't want to be a stumbling block. I want to be careful with how I say this. You don't want to be a stumbling block for someone, but it's not a woman's responsibility to make sure a man gets into heaven.
Preach.
It is his job
Yeah.
to bring his own mind under subjection.
Yes.
And to teach himself how to be appropriate.
Yeah.
And how to think appropriate.
Right.
And how to apply the fruits of the Spirit into your life.
Yeah.
So again, I think modesty is important, but I also think it is something that you are working in your heart about. You should not be doing it to prevent someone else from sinning. You should be doing it because it's what you feel like God is calling you to do.
Right. And by the way, guys, we're not just pulling these anecdotes about how women think about their bodies out of the air. Like my entire master's thesis was about modesty.
Yeah.
And I looked specifically at the tension between modesty and attractiveness that women experience.
Yep.
Where they feel both, because of how difficult our dating culture is. This is where this topic first really started to kind of come alive to me, and how challenging it is, right?
Yeah.
Because women feel a pressure to be attractive in order to meet someone at a conference or at an event. That is held in tension with their desire to really follow scripture and seek after true biblical modesty, right?
Yeah.
Which is not just modesty of the body, it's also modesty of the heart and mind. And
Yep.
it's also just not drawing physical attention to yourself, even if, you're covered in all the right places, right?
Yeah.
And I interviewed woman after woman, different ages, different walks of life, who were sitting in that tension and frankly feeling paralyzed in both their practice of modesty and their concerns about how they appeared to other people. And I don't think this has ever been anyone's intention, but we've created that culture, right? Where we tell women, you're in charge of not making your brother fall, right? And the number of times I heard a woman say that, I don't want to make my brother stumble. I don't want to make my brother fall. How many times have I ever heard a man say, oh, I don't want to make my sister stumble?
Yeah.
You know?
I can quite literally say I've never heard that.
Right.
In my men's circles.
Yeah. It's not a thing. And
Yeah.
it should be. We should be raising our sons with the understanding that they have just as much of a responsibility to practice outward holiness, and also a holiness in how they interact. Because here's the thing, like I said before, the types of stimuli that women find attractive and that create those same, brain Christmas light reactions in them that happen in men are different. And they are more about fitting into a context and a narrative, right? When you think about what women have been trained to see as attractive, right?
Yep.
I'm gonna go to a really cheesy trope. Okay. This is a very Hallmark movie thing. Okay. Where, so the jokes about Hallmark movies are like, they're all about Christmas, right? And it's all like a guy working on a Christmas tree farm that's run by his family, and a big city girl comes back to the town where she's from, whatever.
Oh,
right?
sure. Yeah.
And this guy walks out wearing a flannel shirt that's open, with a t-shirt under it. He's got his sleeves rolled up to right under his elbows. He's carrying some kind of a tool.
Yeah.
Maybe he's wearing a tool belt. He's got messy hair, wiping like grease or something off of his hands with a rag, comes around the corner. What's attractive about that is not just the physicality of this man,
Sure.
which I'm sure they picked a very attractive actor for these things. It's the narrative around it, right? He's demonstrating this masculinity. He's using tools. He's dressed in this very like earthy kind of woodsy attire.
Smells like pine sap.
Yeah. And so as a woman, that attractiveness isn't just about like, wow, that's a really attractive man. It's about the whole narrative around it. And men in church, knowingly or otherwise, step into those narratives in front of women.
Yeah.
When you if you have been the type of guy who did, sort of sidle up to women and flirt very overtly.
Yep.
and that might not be the culture that the group of people that we're speaking to, right? But if you've been that guy that really liked to work the room
Sure.
and flirt, you're stepping into that narrative that's going to cause that same response in women that we tell women not to cause in men.
Yep.
And that is an injustice,
Yep.
frankly.
This is so interesting to me. This is so fascinating.
As a man, how does that make you like
It
what do
makes
you
total
feel?
sense.
Yeah.
Like there are people that we like, that we grew up with that, and even probably myself too, unintentionally,
Mm-hmm.
that in the right context, and again, I'm not trying to make it sound like every man's a predator, like,
No, not at all.
no, it's just like, I knew men growing up that were really, really good at being incredibly physically modest,
Mm-hmm.
but still knew how to work the room
Right.
and to become more attractive to those women.
Sure.
Like they knew how to say the things and do the things and have a presence about themselves.
Yeah.
And women just like they were those guys were the talk of whether it's camp or conference or whatever.
Sure.
And in my mind, that's not modesty of the heart,
Right.
or modesty of your intentions.
Right.
Like, and I'm sure I'm probably talking about like when we were teenagers or young 20s or late teens, but like still, like there's people that still do that to this day, and I'm sure unless we start talking about it,
Mm-hmm.
it's not going to become common knowledge.
Right. I mean, I think the thing that stuck out to me about that was that it is perfectly possible for a man to be, um, modest, to be participating effectively in church, to be living a holy life,
Mm-hmm.
and still intentionally or unintentionally create an arousal response in his sisters in Christ that is not conducive to their benefit and the benefit
Yeah.
of their walk.
Yeah.
And this is not a message that we want to put out there because we want to paralyze guys.
No,
right?
no.
We've talked about how difficult it is for men in the dating space, and we're not trying to add pressure. But I think the key takeaway here is that when we're thinking about how to approach women, when we're thinking about how to approach men, we need to take this narrative of who's more visual and who's going to be more, sort of tempted by X, Y, and Z out of it, and approach each other as the people that we respect,
Yeah.
right? Like, I've been working this week actually on a resource that we're going to be putting out hopefully soon. That's just a quick conversation guide.
Yeah.
And as I was putting it together, I was realizing, like, basically what I'm creating is a way for people to connect with each other in 10 minutes.
Yep.
A 10-minute approach to starting a conversation, keeping that conversation flowing long enough to kind of establish a rapport with someone, and then creating an invitation to continue that conversation.
Yeah.
The thing about that is that process should be the same for a dating interaction as it is for an outreach interaction.
Yeah.
Because what you're doing there is not flirting. You're just making a connection with another human.
Yeah.
And we need to kind of take this weird narrative of like, I don't know, like bird mating calls out of it. Like, it's not
Yeah.
about catching the
It's
eye.
not about a bird dance.
Yeah, no, that wasn't what sold me on you. No, it's not about catching someone's eye in the way that maybe we've been trained to do. And I also am hoping that this is going to take some of the weight off of the shoulders of women who have maybe boxed themselves into a corner because of the fear of being caught up in those stereotypes of being too tempting or running aground of that narrative, right?
Yep.
Boys will be boys and girls will be girls.
Yep.
And our brains are going to respond ultimately the same in interactions where someone is putting out the right triggers.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, we have to approach every interaction with each other as we would approach a brother or sister in Christ, and attraction can grow from that.
Yeah.
Right? I think the other key takeaway, I want to go back to kind of like the very beginning of our conversation. What would be your advice to men who are really, really nervous about stepping away from attraction first dating, giving up the apps?
Oh yeah. So from my perspective during this process, it's a little frustrating to me
Mm-hmm.
to have someone who is a gentleman who is like a solid guy with a lot of potential
Yeah.
that has a true love for God and a calling to like move forward in ministry and be a servant to the church, and also has passions outside of church too. And to find someone who matches them really well, like extremely well, like almost like this would be a really good power couple together. This could be an amazing couple together.
Yeah.
If they were to put their minds together and work for the kingdom, they would be incredibly productive, right? And also in life, like anywhere they go, they're going to be awesome together.
Yeah.
And we give them the bio, and then they see it and they look at it and go, I just don't like the way they look. Or like, oh, well, like I was hoping for someone a little taller.
Right.
Or I was hoping for someone a little shorter, and I don't want to move forward because they're not tall enough. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Like, what does their height and like? Don't get me wrong, I understand preferences. Like, I
Sure.
understand like an ideal for or even like what you would like to have.
Yeah.
But in what world are a couple small preferences going to be something that trumps you going the same direction with someone for the
Mm-hmm.
next 60, 70 years of your life?
Yeah.
You know, like that, it
Yeah.
blows my mind that it was just enough. It was enough to say, no, I don't want to move forward,
Right.
even though I have a 90% match with this person.
Right.
And so, like, again, I don't want any of like the guys to hear that they're not allowed to have preferences. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
What I'm saying is, don't shut down an opportunity to get to know someone just because you're not sure if that's who you want to be with for the rest of your life because of something that initially you weren't sure about.
Right.
Like, that's it. Like, give it a shot.
Yeah.
Like,
Attraction takes time too.
yeah,
The idea that you're just gonna look at someone across the room and feel an instant attraction
yeah.
isn't always practical.
Like, think about it. Think about 100 years ago,
Yeah.
right? A lot of the time, well, one, they didn't have internet, cell phones, or anything like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was only someone you knew in your area. You
Mhm.
probably knew that person for a very long time
Yeah.
before you ever became attracted to that person. So you
Yeah.
have context for who this person is. So in our situation, we're kind of like we're changing the dating scene for synchrony, and our current culture for the apostolic specifically up until this point has only been that style of getting to know someone.
Yeah. Yeah. Are they
Someone
do
knows
they go to the
someone.
church where
Yep.
you've been, or have you moved to their church for college,
Yep.
or are you on a missions trip together? Right.
Yeah. You either met them through camp or missions or a friend of a friend.
Right.
You know, like someone has already given you context for this person to say, hey, I think you might like this person. So
Yeah.
you're already going in there with the right mindset of, or with a mindset of, ooh, this is engaging. Let me see if I like this person.
Yeah.
So basically, that being said, with synchrony, you're meeting someone for the first time, and the only context you have
Mm-hmm.
is that a lot of your values align in a lot of different areas.
Right.
So you going and seeing a single photo of this person and not actually given an opportunity to meet this person and saying, "Oh, no, I don't really want to because of something super, forgive me for saying this, but super superficial."
Yeah.
Like, and saying, I don't want to give this person an opportunity, when really, and with our approach, you don't have to move forward with dating this person. Just
Right.
talk to them, see if you click with this person. It we are the person giving you context.
Right. So I want to kind of summarize what you said to make sure I
Yeah.
got the
Sorry,
clear
I know I kind of
takeaways.
went on a tangent.
It's okay. I think the things that stuck out to me there were that we are transitioning from context-based dating,
Yeah.
right, to a worldly style of dating where it is attraction-based.
Yep.
And what we're doing with Synchrony is trying to call us back and say, hey, you might not have the context anymore because we're going to have to look for people outside of your local church,
Yep.
right? You might not know their grandparents anymore or have worked with them for
Yep.
months and whatever. So now we don't always have the right context, and we're not going to focus first on attraction. We're going to focus on alignment with the things that actually matter to you creating the life you want to create. Yep. And we understand that it's a departure from the norm. And we think that that's needed because the norm has not worked for the church. Do you know how many people I have talked to who, and I don't have hard numbers on how many there are, but I can drum up a number of them in my mind right now that have come through the Synchrony process, and I've interviewed them, who have been divorced, whose marriages started because, like, hey, this person showed up at my church. I thought they were really, really cute, and they were saved, and I figured that was enough.
Yep. We've heard that so many times, guys.
We all know someone who has fallen into a marriage that was less than ideal, and maybe they struggled and made it through, or maybe they didn't.
Yeah.
But that it was based off that initial attraction and not much else, right? So attraction first dating makes us vulnerable to a lot of things, and continuing to put this constant emphasis on attraction sets us up to compromise our brother and sister in Christ by playing into those vulnerabilities that we just talked about.
I have an example that makes a lot of sense to me. I hope it makes sense to other people.
I'm scared.
This is like going to buy a car.
Oh, man.
And the only thing you care about is the paint job.
Yeah. Right.
And is the body not dented? Is do the things that are on the outside, like the like, how does the paint look? How does it look? How does the car look? But you never check the engine. You never check to see if it's comfortable. Like, what's really important about a car is is it going to help me through this journey and keep me safe through life?
We talk about this in sort of some of our courses, is like looking at a house, right?
Yeah, exactly.
If you never see the bones of the house and understand how it works and if it works for you, right? Yeah. The finishings aren't that important.
Yeah.
Right.
Which, by the way, I am not saying what the world says and you need to test drive the car before.
I was worried that I was trying to redirect away from that trope for that reason.
Yeah, I'm not saying you need to do that, but what I'm saying is the inspection of this car is you getting to know that person.
Yeah, it's something to interrogate, and we want everyone to be attracted to their spouses.
Again,
right?
Yeah, again, we know attraction is important, but all we're saying is give yourself a chance to get to know someone first.
Yeah, just give yourself time. And we're going to have to spend more time across other podcast episodes digging more into the ideas of attraction and where they should live in terms of like their significance. But so let this just be like a catalyst. The takeaways I want people to have are that.
Here, let me do some takeaways.
Okay.
Specifically for men coming from a guy. You have more control over your mind and your body than you give yourself credit for.
Amen. So
don't let yourself fall into the excuse that, oh, I'm a man. I can't, these are things that I just have to struggle with. That's not true. One, God gave you power over your body and your mind. And two, there's professionals every single day that have to do this and be professional. It's not some spiritual gifting of you having power over your mind. You have the ability to do it. It's just a skill you have to train. And two, attraction's important. But maybe, just maybe, don't make it your number one priority. Maybe knock it down to number 2 or 3 and give someone an opportunity, give yourself an opportunity to get to know someone and give that opportunity a chance to see if that person is actually exactly what you've been looking for.
Yeah.
And I promise you, like, falling in love with their heart and their mind and their passions and the things that you're doing in life and the trajectory that you're going is so much more important than an appearance. Again, I think that media and the world has told us that is the number one important thing, and it is not true. But again, long story short, give yourself a chance to get to know someone first.
Yeah. And, if you sit down with us in a synchrony conversation, we're going to talk to you about what you find attractive, but I'm going to tell you up front that that's a preference, and I consider that to be less important than your values. And when I look for matches for people, I look for values first.
Yeah.
And we've heard success from that with people, that they've had conversations and interactions with people that they might not have considered if they were just to meet them on the street.
Yeah.
That they have found rich and fulfilling and worthwhile. So we're excited about that. Let's put a bow on this because it is 1 a.m. and we're just going to get loopier.
Yep.
What announcements do we have for the people?
We have a sale going on for our consultation fee. It is $75 off till July 31st.
Yep.
As our summer sale. If you go to our website and click on the register here button, it will automatically bring it up in the purchase window, the $75 off at synchronyproject.com. And also we have our Operation 50/50.
We have had some folks refer. So there are people, not enough people, but there are people that are in the running for that $1,000 prize.
And the what that means is, for those who are new listeners, we have a raffle going on that Operation 50/50. If you refer a man to us and they sign up and they put you as a reference, you will be put in for a single ticket for a drawing for $1,000.
Yep.
But guess what? If you refer 2 or 3 or 4 men, those are all individual extra tickets to be drawn for the raffle. So you could have as many inputs as you want. So
So reach out to the singles that you know and love.
Does not matter age, as long as they're over the age of 21. A lot of people keep on bottling themselves to people in their friend group, but there's some single mom or dad or senior saint in a church that's looking for love and hasn't just found it yet, and we might be able to help them.
Yeah, we'd love to. And also, please check out our friends at Cafe 117. Support their mission. They are doing amazing, amazing work with Compassion Services International, and their coffee is good.
It is fantastic. Also, isn't there a code that they have to put in for?
Yes. So check out the show notes where we'll have that discount code so you can get your 15% off, and a link so that you can just directly go to their shopping cart. But we are excited to partner with them. We're very grateful to them. You'll be hearing more about them in the future, and we will be drinking more of their coffee.
Absolutely.
Hey, babe.
Yes.
I love you.
I love you too.
And I do find you devastatingly attractive.
You as well.
Thank you very much. Even in our 1 a.m. caffeine-induced stupor.
Yeah.
It's great. This is what values alignment does.
Yeah, and sleep deprivation.
Yeah. Don't try this at home, kids.
Yeah.
All right.
See you guys.
Bye.